The afternoon sun hammered down on the cracked earth, bending heat into shimmering waves over the vast savannah. A low, rasping groan broke the constant hum of cicadas, carrying a subtle note of desperation. Beneath the sparse shade of an acacia, a thin lion lay stretched on the ground, ribs sharply defined, spine rising like a brittle ridge beneath sun-bleached fur. His amber eyes were half-closed, flicking toward every whisper of movement, every distant bird call, yet there was a softness there, a silent plea hidden behind the terror in his gaze. The air smelled of dry grass and scorched soil, with the faint, musky scent of the sick lion drifting faintly on the breeze. Each shallow breath seemed like a labor, a delicate balance of effort and survival. Occasionally, a low moan escaped, almost imperceptible, yet laden with fatigue and vulnerability. He tried to lift his head, then sank back to the earth, too weak to hold himself fully upright. A man crouched at a respectful distance, moving slowly, hands visible but unthreatening. His voice, barely a whisper, floated toward the lion. "It's okay, we'll help." There was no urgency, no command, only patience and quiet presence. The lion stiffened, ears flicking, eyes narrowing. Then, almost imperceptibly, curiosity began to overcome fear. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the rustle of dry grasses and distant bird calls. Slowly, he shifted closer to the water the man had placed on the ground. Each movement was tentative, deliberate, yet there was a glimmer of trust in the careful tilt of his head and the soft lowering of his body. Signs of illness were unmistakable. Fur was dull and matted, limbs trembled with weakness, and a dry, persistent cough rattled from deep within. Still, the man remained near, offering water and small portions of food, murmuring softly between gestures. "You're stronger than you know," he whispered, kneeling in the dust without pressure, letting the lion choose each movement. As the day wore on, the sun softened into a warm amber glow. Shadows stretched over the cracked plains, lengthening with the approach of evening. The lion lifted his head higher, muscles tensing and relaxing in careful increments. A subtle shiver ran through him, yet he did not retreat. When his eyes met the man's for a brief moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a fragile trust, tentative but undeniable. Then, slowly, the lion nudged the man's hand with his muzzle, a gesture of recognition and reliance. The moans softened into measured, rhythmic breaths. Each careful step, whether toward the water or back to the shade, revealed a quiet determination, a stubborn resilience that defied his skeletal frame. Survival was no longer just instinct. It was the bond forged in patience, compassion, and gentle attention. As the sun sank toward the horizon, painting the savannah gold and crimson, the lion finally rose fully, his legs unsteady but purposeful. Dust swirled behind him as he walked a few steps, paused, then turned his gaze one last time toward the man. Slowly, he disappeared into the fading light, leaving behind only the faint scent of musk and earth, a soft impression of life enduring against all odds. In that quiet, glowing hush, it was clear, the lion's terrifying appearance had concealed a heart ready to endure, to trust, and to live. The day's silent, tender connection lingered, a reminder that patience and gentle care can awaken courage even in the most fragile of souls. Dawn arrived with a soft hush over the savannah, painting the horizon in pale gold and lavender. The air carried the faint scent of dew on dry grass, a sharp contrast to yesterday's sun-baked heat. Beneath the same acacia where he had lain so feeble, the lion shifted. Muscles that had seemed wasted and frail flexed subtly, testing the stiffness of early morning movement. His ribs no longer jutted sharply with every breath, a slight sheen of life returned to dull fur. The man approached cautiously, careful to keep distance, letting the lion dictate the pace. "Take your time," he whispered, placing a shallow dish of water a few paces away. The lion's amber eyes lifted, alert yet wary. He sniffed the water, dipped a tentative tongue, then lowered himself again, each motion measured and careful, as if learning the rhythm of strength once more. Morning sounds filled the air, distant calls of birds, the rustle of grass as small animals stirred, and the whisper of a gentle breeze over cracked earth. Each sound seemed magnified to the lion, who flicked his ears and twitched his tail at the subtle movement of life around him. Despite the frailty still evident in his thin frame, there was an undeniable curiosity in his posture, a desire to engage with the world beyond his small, shaded patch. Small steps became longer, more confident. He rose fully, muscles trembling but bearing his weight. Dust rose in faint clouds beneath his paws as he paced in short circles, testing balance, strength, and coordination. The man remained silent, kneeling in the grass, offering encouragement through presence rather than command. "Good, yes," he murmured softly, letting the lion hear comfort without pressure. The lion's soft moans became less frequent, replaced by the quiet shuffle of deliberate steps. Occasionally, he paused to glance at the man, amber eyes meeting human eyes with unspoken acknowledgement. Then, with careful deliberation, he pressed his head against the man's outstretched hand, a brief, cautious gesture of trust. His muzzle, though thin and weak, carried warmth, the faint pulse of life beating strongly beneath. As the morning stretched toward noon, the savannah shimmered under the growing sun. The lion began exploring beyond the shade, stepping carefully over dry grass and small rocks. His tail twitched with tentative excitement. A small, playful crouch suggested the stirrings of energy returning. The man followed at a distance, silent witness to this delicate reawakening. Each movement, each cautious step, felt like a tiny triumph over fragility. Then came a moment that made the man pause. The lion stopped near a shallow stream, lowered his head, and drank with a vigor that had been absent the day before. Water dripped from his muzzle, glittering in the sun, and for the first time, a subtle sheen of health gleamed across his sun-scorched coat. The tiny victories were building into something undeniable, strength returning, trust solidifying, and the fragile lion awakening to the promise of life beyond pain. By afternoon, the lion lay in the sun, chest rising and falling in steady breaths. The man knelt nearby, watching quietly, feeling the weight of the bond they had forged. The savannah stretched endlessly around them, golden and alive, but in that small space under the acacia, it felt intimate and sacred. Life was stirring, fragile yet insistent, and the once terrifying figure of weakness now held a quiet, undeniable power. The lion's gaze met the man's one last time before he rose to explore further, each step more confident than the last. In the still warmth of the afternoon, the man understood. Patience, compassion, and gentle persistence had coaxed strength from fragility. The lion's awakening was a quiet miracle, one that would ripple across the plains in the soft echo of trust and endurance. Morning stretched across the savannah like liquid gold, spilling over cracked earth and dew-specked grass. The lion had grown taller in posture, ribs less pronounced, muscles showing the first hints of regained power. His amber eyes, once dull and wary, now gleamed with curiosity, flicking toward distant horizons, ears twitching at the rustle of unseen creatures. The man followed silently, mindful not to crowd the lion's space. "Easy, take it slow," he whispered, his voice barely carrying over the wind. The lion responded not with fear, but a subtle acknowledgement, a tilt of his head, a slow blink that seemed to say, "I know you're here, and I trust you." Stepping carefully, he left the acacia's shade for open plains. Each stride tested balance and strength, paws pressing into dust and dry grass, claws leaving shallow marks on the earth. A small breeze ruffled the thin mane along his neck, lifting fine strands as he shook his head and sniffed the air. The faint scent of distant water, other animals, and wild grasses carried to him, stirring instincts long dulled by weakness. He paused near a termite mound, sniffing cautiously, then pawed at the base, watching as a few scattered insects fled. A low, soft growl escaped, not of aggression, but of focus, a sound that carried strength and the first spark of confidence since his illness. The man crouched at a respectful distance, watching the gestures of natural curiosity, each movement a small victory in the lion's return to life. As the sun climbed higher, the lion explored further, walking along narrow dry streambeds and pausing to examine shadows cast by small shrubs. His body had begun to ripple with motion, muscles flexing beneath recovering fur. The thin tail flicked with quiet excitement, the head held high yet relaxed, each cautious step a rehearsal for the freedom that awaited beyond the acacia. The man offered water again, setting it a few paces ahead, speaking softly. "There you go, good boy." The lion approached deliberately, drinking with ease and then lifting his muzzle toward the wind, inhaling the scents of the savannah with slow, deliberate breaths. The eyes that had once held only fear now scanned the horizon with awareness, taking measure of the wide, open world. Later, he lay in the sun, stretching long limbs, rolling slightly onto one side, then pushing himself upright. A quiet moan of contentment escaped, brief and almost inaudible, but it marked a turning point. Strength was returning, yet he remained gentle, aware of the human presence nearby, acknowledging it without hesitation or fear. A distant movement caught his attention, a small herd of antelope grazing along the edge of the plain. The lion froze, muscles taut, but there was no rush, no panic. Instead, he observed, body language fluid and poised, curiosity tempered by caution. He lowered his head slightly, tail flicking softly, then turned back to the man with an almost imperceptible nudge, a gesture of shared understanding, a bond now solidified. As the day waned, the lion padded back toward the acacia, each step carrying strength, awareness, and quiet pride. The man followed a few paces behind, heart heavy with emotion. The lion's recovery was more than physical. It was trust regained, courage rebuilt, and the fragile promise of life restored. The golden light of late afternoon brushed the plains, highlighting a creature once broken, now moving confidently into the world, ready for the wild yet tethered by an unspoken connection to the human who had been patient enough to wait. The sun dipped toward the horizon, leaving the savannah bathed in warm amber shadows. The lion paused one last time, amber eyes meeting the man's in silent acknowledgement. Then, with fluid, measured steps, he disappeared into the open plains, a living testament to resilience, trust, and the quiet miracles that arise when patience and compassion guide the way. The sun rose pale and soft over the savannah, casting long shadows that stretched across the golden grass. The lion moved with purpose, paws pressing lightly into the earth, muscles flexing under a coat that had grown fuller and brighter. Each step carried confidence, tempered by caution, as if the world was new again, full of scents, sounds, and textures waiting to be explored. The man walked at a distance, letting the lion set the pace. "Easy, take it slow," he whispered, voice almost lost in the vast stillness. The lion's ears flicked at the sound, acknowledging it with a subtle tilt of his head, but he did not pause. His amber eyes scanned the plains, alert to movement, scent, and the presence of others. Ahead, a small pride rested in the shade of a distant acacia. Females and cubs lifted their heads, ears twitching, eyes sharp and curious. The lion froze, muscles taut, then stepped forward slowly, low to the ground at first, body language cautious yet composed. A short, soft rumble emerged from his throat, a greeting both respectful and measured, signaling recognition without aggression. The pride responded, sniffing the air, then approaching in careful, synchronized steps. Cubs hesitated at first, then edged closer, tails flicking with playful curiosity. Females circled him, eyes studying, then nodding ever so slightly as if acknowledging a long-lost member returning. There were no roars, no dramatic confrontations, only quiet observation, sniffing, and soft rumbling calls exchanged. The lion lowered himself slightly, shoulders dipping in a gesture of peace. The subtle movements, the shift of paws, a slow tail sweep, a gentle nudge with the head, spoke volumes. Trust, patience, and respect governed the reunion. Each gesture was deliberate, part of a silent dialogue that only lions understand. The man remained a few paces behind, watching the interactions with a quiet awe. He could see the fragile balance of wild instincts and regained strength in every muscle, every glance. The lion had not only healed physically but learned the rhythms of his world again, bridging the gap between fragility and wild grace. For a while, the lion walked alongside the pride, observing the young cubs chase each other, females rolling in dust, tails flicking and ears twitching in playful movements. He did not join in immediately, yet his presence was accepted, acknowledged, and respected. A soft breeze carried scents of dry grass, distant waterholes, and the faint musk of other predators far off, weaving them together into a sensory tapestry only a wild animal could read. When the sun reached its zenith, the lion paused on a small rise, amber eyes scanning the horizon. The pride lingered nearby, their low rumbles mixing with the distant calls of birds and the whisper of wind. He glanced back, briefly meeting the man's eyes, a subtle nudge of recognition and gratitude. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, but it carried the weight of the journey. Patience, trust, and care had restored him to the life he was born to live. As the day waned, the lion moved with the pride toward a distant waterhole, each step fluid, confident, and alert. The man watched from afar, heart heavy with emotion, knowing the bond remained even as the lion fully embraced his place in the wild. The savannah stretched endlessly, golden and alive, and in that expanse, a thin, sick lion had become strong, proud, and free, yet tethered by the silent connection forged through care, compassion, and respect. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the plains in amber and crimson. The lion paused once more, head high, chest rising and falling steadily, before moving with the pride into the tall grasses, blending into the wilderness. The man stayed where he was, carrying the quiet memory of trust, patience, and the miracle of survival. The savannah glowed with the soft light of early morning, each blade of grass etched in gold and shadow. The lion walked alongside the pride, muscles rippling beneath a glossy coat, paws pressing into the earth with confidence and grace. Every movement carried the assurance of strength regained, yet tempered by the calm awareness that had grown from his delicate recovery. The man followed at a respectful distance, silent, letting the lion lead. "Take your time," he murmured softly, voice low, almost lost in the morning breeze. The lion acknowledged him with a subtle tilt of the head, amber eyes steady, carrying both recognition and trust. He no longer looked at the man as a helper, but as a quiet witness to the journey he had endured, a guardian of patience who had restored the courage that was his birthright. Ahead, the pride moved through tall grasses, females guiding cubs along narrow paths, the soft clatter of paws mingling with the whisper of wind and distant bird calls. The lion's presence was unchallenged. Even the cubs approached, flicking tails and tumbling over one another in playful curiosity. He lowered himself slightly, a gentle rumble resonating from deep within, signaling peaceful intent, while subtle movements, head nudges, slow blinks, and tail flicks, formed a silent language of acceptance and reintegration. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows that danced over undulating plains. The lion paused atop a low mound, scanning the horizon with heightened awareness. Golden light reflected from his menere, highlighting the strength beneath the thin frame that had once been frail and broken. A low, measured growl escaped him, not of threat, but of authority, confidence, and pride. In that moment, the man felt the weight of what had been achieved, life restored, trust honored, and strength reclaimed. The pride began moving toward a distant waterhole, each step fluid, coordinated, instinctive. The lion walked with measured elegance, positioning himself between cubs and females at times, protective yet gentle. His gaze flicked briefly to the man, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that would endure despite the widening distance between human and wild. The man remained still, heart full, aware that this day marked the culmination of patience, care, and quiet perseverance. A soft breeze carried the scent of dry grass, distant flowers, and the faint musk of other wildlife. The cubs frolicked nearby, stumbling over one another as their parents watched with alert but relaxed eyes. The lion, now fully reintegrated, moved among them with subtle authority, checking their safety and guiding their steps with an elegance born of strength and wisdom. He had become whole again, not just physically, but in spirit, free to embrace the life he was born to live. As afternoon approached, the savannah began to shimmer under the sun's waning warmth. The lion and pride disappeared into tall grasses, their forms blending seamlessly with the wild landscape. The man remained at the edge of the clearing, the weight of the journey settling in his chest. He had witnessed a quiet miracle, a creature, once terrifying in its frailty, now restored, proud, and free. The bond they shared was invisible yet undeniable, a testament to trust, compassion, and patience. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in amber, crimson, and violet. The lion's silhouette, broad and commanding, disappeared into the golden waves of grass. The man turned slowly, carrying the memory of eyes that had learned to trust again, the soft rumble of a creature's reclaimed pride, and the knowledge that some connections, though quiet, endure forever, etched in both human and wild hearts.